Hello, good evening. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful week. The week of giving thanks. Today is 11/22/2022. Master numbers all up in this biz. And I've caught so many throughout the day. 4 333 222, a 6 an 8 So many good syncs. I'm cleaning my glasses right now. And then we're going to dig into this reading, which is called The Music Lesson, A Spiritual Search for Growth Through Music by Victor L. Wooten. And oh my goodness, I did some research on Victor L. Wooten. He is amazing. He's amazing. I mean, he's awesome. And I mean, this book already told me that, but YouTube is strewn with his amazingness as well. You're welcome to check it out. So welcome all, welcome any. I hope you're having a wonderful week. My week has been wonderful. And yeah, tomorrow I'm celebrating Thanksgiving with my family, and that's going to be wonderful too. So I wish you wonderful Thanksgivings as well. So getting into measure 4/chapter 4, technique. Are you using magic? Yes, I am. It's called technique. Okay. I was speechless. I stood there for a moment, letting his words linger in my mind. A breeze blew across my face as he turned and walked away. It chilled my skin. Somehow, I felt his words were connected to the breeze. I can't explain it, but it was as if his message was carried through the air and into my ears by the wind. And like the wind, it hit before I could see it coming. After retrieving our popsicle sticks, we didn't speak another word all the way back to the car. When we arrived, Michael broke the silence. "Watch," he said. I hadn't noticed, but he had picked up two small pieces of wood. One was a straight, thin, round stick, about 14 inches long. The other was a short, flat board, a little thicker than a stick. He knelt down on one knee, placing the flat board on the ground. Holding the board down with his foot, he held the long stick between his palms, perpendicular to the flat board, forming an upside-down T. By rapidly rubbing his palms together, he rolled the thin stick back and forth. With his body leaning over his hands, providing downward pressure, he caused the stick to rub and spin back and forth against the board, creating friction and heat. Within a few seconds, the wood started smoking. A few seconds later, he stopped rolling the stick. "Look," he said. I looked down, and there was a red-hot coal lying beside the flat board. After allowing me a good look, he transferred the coal into a pile of dry grass. Then he gently picked up the pile and blew on it 3 times. During his third breath, the whole thing burst into flames right in his hands. It was both amazing and beautiful to watch. Michael told me that what he'd used was called a hand drill. I'd seen someone make a fire using that technique once before on a television show, but I'd never seen anything quite like what Michael demonstrated. The whole process took less than 1 minute, and if he hadn't stopped to let me watch, I would have probably taken. Oh, and if he hadn't stopped to let me watch, it would have probably taken less than 30 seconds. A year or so later, I practiced making a fire using a hand drill and bow drill techniques. It was not easy to do. To make a fire in that short amount of time still seems nearly impossible. I've seen it done on. Hey, Pajo. Hey, Desert Rose. Welcome, everybody. Aw, thank you so much. Man, I love you. By grace indeed and prayer. So thankful. Yeah, whenever I've tried this, it's taken forever. It has not taken me a minute. No way. It's like a lot longer than that. Like an afternoon, to be honest. I just filled my water. It's so cold and good. Also, Angelfish, I love you. I see that you were here earlier. I love you. So he says, a year or so later, I practiced making fire using the hand drill and bow drill techniques. It was not easy to do. To make a fire in that short amount of time still seems nearly impossible. After holding the flaming bundle for a few seconds, Michael tossed it on the ground and looked at me. Your turn, he suggested as he stamped out the flames. Okay, I'll give it a try. I knelt down and did my best to repeat what I'd just seen, practically mangling the two pieces of wood in the process. The stick in my hands kept wobbling back and forth, slipping off the flat board on the ground. After about 2 minutes of struggling, I was exhausted. I dropped the stick and sat back, tired and sweaty. Michael chuckled, picked up the stick, and had the wood smoking again within a few seconds. How'd you do that? I asked, still out of breath. Are you using magic? I was only half joking. Yes, I am. It's called technique, he answered. Without proper technique, nothing can happen. Can you teach me the proper technique for making a fire? I asked, forgetting one of his first rules. No, I can't, he answered with his familiar sly grin. Why not? I asked. Oh, right. Will you show me the proper technique, please? I was slowly adapting to his style of teaching. I would be delighted, is what his response was. We knelt down, and he showed me how and where to place my hands and feet. He told me that the reason the stick, made of horseweed, was wobbling against the cedar board was that I was favoring my stronger hand. Use both hands equally, he instructed. Most musicians favor their stronger hand. They may never realize it, but if the problem is not corrected, it will surely hinder the progress. And here, he said, pointing at the sticks, if the problem is not corrected, you will never make a fire. After a few more starts and stops, corrections and adjustments, I had smoke. It wasn't much, but it was smoke. Michael laughed and told me that I was sweating so much while I was start a fire, I would likely put out my coal before I could ever ignite the flame. I fell back on the ground, spent and breathing hard. Michael spoke so that I didn't have to. To play music, good technique is a must. You can know all the notes in the world. You can have the best ideas in the world, but you need good technique to get them out. Your technique can even be unorthodox, but if it is inadequate, you will not be able to express yourself freely. You will frustrate yourself instead. Good technique allows you to use all the other elements of music at will. Also, I want to point out that, hey, Michelle, welcome in. I want to point out too that every time the word music is typed, it has a capital M. I love that. Also, before, and still through the book, a lot of the times when he says it's spelled with a capital U, I think it's because we're magnets. That's just a thought. He knelt down and proceeded to make another coal as easily as he'd make balls. Let me take a sip and try again. He knelt down and proceeded to make another coal as easily as he'd made the first. He never stopped talking during the process. I relaxed on the ground, watching and listening. Your technique should be at such a high level that you can forget about it. Eventually, you will even forget about your bass. Only then can you remember how to play music. Think about talking. That's 2 sentences. Okay, wait. Only then can you remember to play music. Think about talking. When you talk, the words are your notes. Your tongue, diaphragm, mouth, teeth, lips, and so on are your instruments. How you use them to push air across your vocal cords and through your lips to form words is your technique. But you rarely think about that. Boom. It's like every sentence. His coal was still smoking, so I threw some grass on top of it. The grass was moist, which almost put out the coal, but Michael came to the rescue, blowing on it with a couple short breaths. He had it smoking again within seconds. When you were a baby, he continued, your technique was not adequate enough to allow you to speak like everyone else. You would babble on and on, trying to work it out and be understood. Not having the proper control of your instrument caused you to cry. He frowned comically, as if he was an upset child. I had to laugh. After many months, you finally developed the control allowing you to say the things you wanted to say. That made you happy. The feeling of joy encouraged you to learn more. He stood up smiling, raising his hands into the air. Notice you did develop your speaking technique through diligent practice, at least not the type of practice you're familiar with. Your parents didn't lock you in a room and make you work on it 3 hours a day, and they didn't make you take lessons. You learned to speak through a natural process. Musicians could benefit from looking at this process. When learning music, we think we need to concentrate really hard on something until we achieve success. We also think we should lock ourselves in what we call the woodshed for at least a few hours a day and focus on what we are doing. We practice our scales, modes, and techniques over and over until they become second nature. This, we think, is the only way of attaining a level of master musician. Attaining the level of master musician. I propose a different path. Hey, Milky Way, good to see you, Robert. Awesome. He bent down over the coal and waved his hand one time, creating a breeze. He stood back up. The grass burst into flames. My eyes widened. He didn't react. Do you have to concentrate to speak English? He inquired. When you are playing music at your best, are you concentrating? Do you want to have to concentrate every time you do anything well? No, you don't. You feel it. I was tense, but he seemed at ease, trading hard. I tried to keep up with what he was both doing and saying. Between listening to his words and watching him manipulate the fire, I was getting left behind. I began to speak again, so I did my best to pay attention. If a policeman walked up to you right now and commanded you to walk a straight line, you would probably have a hard time doing it. Why? He stood up and acted as if he were walking on a tightrope. Because you would start concentrating on doing it right. Dude. He fell to the ground as if losing his balance. Looking up at me, he continued, you don't have to concentrate to walk. So when you start trying to concentrate, your body does not like it and you lose your balance. If you were to do that in front of the policeman, you could end up in jail. And that is exactly what happens to most of us when we try to play music. We allow ourselves to be trapped in the jails of our own minds. He clenched his fists in front of him, pantomiming being behind bars. I always loved pantomimes. There is a time for concentrating and a time for not concentrating, he said. Concentration is similar to focusing the rays of the sun into one point by use of a magnifying glass. Amazing amounts of heat can be produced by using this method. You used to do it as a kid, am I right? I smiled but didn't answer. Of course he was right. I thought about the few times I'd played with fire as a kid. I'd always enjoyed starting fires with a magnifying glass. There was something about focusing the sun's rays down to one point that intrigued me. I thought about the possibilities of doing it with one's mind. Michael sat down in a full lotus position before continuing, interrupting my child recollections. Concentrating or focusing is great for projecting your thoughts or your will. This usually means closing down the mind in a way that shuts out all other factors, except for the one thing you are attempting to achieve. Resting his hands on his knees, he turned his palms upward, touching his thumbs and middle fingers together. Closing his eyes, he continued to speak. He continued speaking. Miracles can be produced through concentration of this type, but it takes control. If the proper method or technique is used, the mind can produce much more heat than the largest magnifying glass. But depending on the situation, that may not be the most productive use of the mind. Dude, have you ever seen videos of that on YouTube? I have. Oh my gosh. Dang. Hey, group hug, everyone. I love yous. Welcome, everyone here. Lurkers, anyone who comes now, anyone later. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy 11/22, a 222. Yeah. It's like we know these things now, and we're starting to know these things more. It's like the structures we build for living. We know that we should and could and will make them places that are they're like in a symbiotic sort of relationship with nature that helps it grow, helps us grow. And in schools where food is served that's really good for us and healthy and full of nutrition, because let food be thy medicine. And that the curriculum that we would teach would really focus on the power of thought and yeah. I could see it. One day at a time. Code! Yay! Happy 11/22. Big love. Big much. That's what my cousin says. Love you, big much. Mr. Hugh. Everybody, welcome. Okay, where am I in this awesome book? Recollections. Okay. Oh yeah. Those dudes on YouTube. I've seen. It's just so fascinating. If I remember, I'll link down below. Oh, I'll link down below. Hey, Red, welcome in. Awesome. Happy 11/22. Happy Thanksgiving. If I can remember, I'll find a couple of those videos where it shows people using the power of their mind to like melt plastic and start fires and things like that. It's so fascinating. I mean, at your own discretion. Maybe or maybe it's true. You know, maybe or maybe not it's true. I felt it when I watched it. Resting his hands on his knees, he turned his palms upward, touching his thumb and middle fingers together. Closing his eyes, he continued to speak. Miracles can be produced through concentration of this type, but it takes control. If the proper method or technique is used, the mind can produce much more heat than the largest magnifying glass. But depending on the situation, that may not be the most productive use of the mind. So that's what I just read. Well, now we can continue. When it is time to receive information, opening the mind works best. He opened his eyes to stress his point. It is like taking the power of your mind and opening it up to whatever information is out there. The mind cannot achieve its true potential until you have mastered each of these techniques. Like yin and yang, they work together to complete the whole. If you do not want to have to concentrate every time you play your bass, you should not have to concentrate every time you practice. Yin, female, yang, masculine. Do you guys want to know my really crude poem that helped me remember which one was masculine and which one was feminine? Oh no. Okay, I'm going to tell you. Oh no, it's so crude. But as soon as I thought it, I couldn't unthink it. And then I remembered forever. Okay. Yin. Yin, you put it in. Yang, you have a wang. It's like, that's so crude. But now you'll never forget either. I never said that out loud before. Okay, I think I'm blushing. All right. I should have realized that myself. I hated having to concentrate just to make music. I knew that whatever I was performing, whenever I was performing at my best, I wasn't concentrating at all. I was in the zone, still frustrated about how much I was having to concentrate at that moment. I kept quiet and listened. Kids know how to do it instinctively, but most adults unintentionally do their best to rob them of this beautiful quality. Children learn faster than most adults ever will because their minds are open. They may not realize what they're doing, but by opening their minds to all the information available to them, their power of imagination and creation becomes limitless, which means their potential is limitless. You don't get an imagination like that through concentration. Hey, Kimba, welcome in. Michael was usually like a kid himself, never sitting still for long. Though he used his arms to gesture, this was as long as I'd seen him sit in one position. Still sitting in lotus position, he removed his hat and used it to fan the coal that was still smoldering next to him. It appeared as if he was sending smoke signals. Now, using his hat to gesture, he continued speaking. Like this smoke, knowledge is in the air. All knowledge that ever existed or ever will exist is here already, right here, right now. If you can tune into the correct frequency, you can pick up any information you want. We think the brain creates knowledge, but I am here to tell you that the brain creates nothing. The brain receives, or more accurately, it discovers. It would be a miracle in and of itself to think that everything in this world came from the brain. A jelly like mass the size of a grapefruit. The brain can receive information and then use it. But create it? No. He lowered his head, shaking it back and forth. Jelly brains. Then he quickly waved his finger through the smoke, and it swirled, slithering around like a snake. The smoke slowly danced its way toward me. I leaned back, imagined a tongue tasting the air and testing my comfort level. Once the snake dissipated, he placed his safari hat on the ground, completely covering the coal. It caused his hat to start smoldering. I was confused by his actions once again. Enjoying my confused look, he smiled and continued talking. Music comes out of a radio, but is music inside the box? No. Music is in the air. The radio has the ability to tune in to the proper frequency and pick up whatever music it wants, but it does not create it. Imagine if the radio could open up and play all music at once. The results would be chaos, unless it's tuned in to what we want to receive. It's not really working at all. Many people lose control in life by doing exactly that. They open up to the all without the proper control necessary to assimilate all the information. The result, unless prepared, is chaos. Remember, all knowledge is in the air, and since you breathe in this air, all knowledge is also in you. The radio demonstrates what I am talking about perfectly. Yeah, because air is spirit, it is God, it is all. It is the spiritus. Man. Balls. As he finished his monologue, he placed the still smoking hat back onto his head, making it appear as if his head was on fire. From his cross legged position, he smiled proudly. Again, I found myself marveling at just how childlike the strange man's actions could appear. I got the feeling that he was using the radio technique right then to receive the information that he was feeding me. He seemed too crazy to come up with it on his own. Dude, when I was at Dixie's house last week, we were getting out all this Christmas stuff from one of her closets. And she had this safari hat up in the top of her closet. And this safari hat has a built-in fan. Isn't that cool? She was at some Olympics somewhere really hot one year. And I guess this policeman stopped her and asked her, "Where'd you get that hat?" And then she was like, "Yeah, they didn't sell them here, and you can't have it." Man, can you imagine? A safari hat with a fan in it? That's luxury. She's so cool. This is in parentheses, so this must be Victor thinking. I could use this skill. It surely would be nice not having to keep all of my knowledge in my brain at all times. I thought I could feel my head smoke as well. All of a sudden, I realized something about my own method of learning. I usually tried to block out all other things so I could cram new information into my head. It rarely worked. My brain, being cramped already, would usually spit the information back out. I could imagine a no vacancy sign posted on the door of my brain. No more information, please. As if reading my thoughts, Michael asked, "How does this pertain to technique?" "I think I know," I answered. Michael placed his hat on my head. It was still smoking. "Now," he instructed, "don't think. Either you know or you don't. Tell me what you know." "Okay. When I play at my best, I'm not thinking. I'm in the zone. Music is flowing through me, but this is broken sometimes when I make a mistake. My mistakes are often caused by frustration, and making mistakes often causes me to become frustrated. Many times, poor technique is at the root of the problem. Poor technique robs me of free expression. It's like I hear what I want to play, but my technique doesn't allow it to come out. Now, I continued, in order for me to play freely, I need good technique, but I don't want to be thinking about my technique while I'm playing any more than I want to be thinking about my mouth when I'm talking. So when I practice, I use concentration to learn what the technique is. Then I use not concentrating to get completely comfortable using the technique. Combining the two concentration methods allows me to get a complete grasp of the technique. I surprised myself. Somehow I was finally getting it. I didn't know where the information was coming from, but I was open to it and flowing through me. I wasn't ready to stop. Feeling the energy, I kept talking. If not concentrating is where I want to end up, I need to add it to my practice routine. Combining concentrating with not concentrating is necessary to complete the circle. This, like you said, is yin and yang. Both parts are needed to complete the whole. We know how to concentrate and we know how to practice concentrating, but do we know how to practice not concentrating? I need to figure that out for the circle to be complete. "What can you use to practice not concentrating?" Michael asked as he removed the still smoldering hat from my head. "Television," I replied. That was an easy one for me. "Do you think that television can be of any assistance?" "Of course it can," I responded. "If I practice my techniques while watching a television show, it might allow another part of my brain to be activated. This would simulate not concentrating while playing music." "I thought television was a negative thing," Michael said, raising both eyebrows. "Well, then, that's what you thought," I answered with complete authority. I didn't know where my newly found authority was coming from, but I had it and was running with it. I sat down, trying to form my own lotus position. My legs screamed, "No!" Hearing Michael chuckle under his breath, I scraped the lotus idea and decided to display my authority with words instead. No capitals. Welcome in. Awesome. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy 11/22. Who's texting me? Nobody texts me. Oh, it's my mom. She texts me. Cool. All right. Television is only negative or positive depending on how you use it, I continued. Like a Zen master once said, nothing is either good or bad until we think it is, or no, until thinking it's so, or something like that. It was my turn to be poetic, and I blew it. Anyway, if we're going to watch, why not use it to our advantage? That's not the only way. Daydreaming, night dreaming, sitting in nature, meditation, and many other things could help me learn how to not concentrate so that we can spend more time feeling the music. If we had to concentrate all the time on the techniques and the instruments we use to talk, we would never be able to say anything worthwhile. Being able to concentrate or not is necessary before one can reach his full potential. If television can help me with it, that's what I'll use. You may choose to use something else if you want to. I folded my arms instead of my legs and nodded my head one time. Spoken with true understanding, Michael commented as he bowed down to my feet. Teach me! Will you teach me, master? No, I can teach you nothing, I responded, patting him on the head. We laughed for a long time about my narration. Michael seemed pleased. I was shocked about what I'd said and the authority I'd expressed because I didn't know where it had come from. I knew what I'd said was accurate, though. And I was sure of myself like never before. Without warning, Michael hopped up, picked up 3 sticks, and started juggling them. I was impressed. What he did next was even more surprising. He walked up to the front of the car and used the sticks to play a rhythmic pattern on the hood, and never stopping the whole time. That's pretty good, I remarked. How's my drumming? He asked. Great. Close your eyes and listen. I closed my eyes and listened closely. In doing so, I realized that his drumming was not that good at all. His juggling was great, but his rhythm was unsteady, mediocre at best. Fooled you with my performance, Michael stated, as he caught the sticks in one hand. I guess you did. A great performance can make anyone sound good. Boom! I think that's something Corey and I have. 'Cause shoot, my lips are so dry. I gotta put some of this lip chapstick on. I don't know what. I've never used chapsticks for anything but my lips before, but this is specifically lip chapstick today. Dude, I love this book too. Okay, I'm gonna pause and do a little cough. Okie dokie. To find my spot. Okay. A great performance can make anyone sound good. I see. There's a little. Technique often serves the same purpose, he added. The use of flashy techniques can cause the audience to start watching and stop listening. At the appropriate time, this can be a useful tool. The problem with this is, more times than not, it is the musician who stops listening and not the audience. That should never happen. More and more bass players are learning the flashy techniques first. For some reason, He pointed at me. He spoke. They should develop a more solid foundation before they venture off in that direction. It doesn't matter what the technique is. Just make it solid before you make it flashy. I used to perform with this other dude, and he could play the guitar behind his back, and he like did it at every show. He was good at it, and like people loved it. I just thought like, dude, I don't know. It annoyed me. It annoyed me right quick. I don't know why, even though I was still impressed. I was just like, dude, what? Like, you're such a I don't know, show off or something. Like, what? Anyways, he's a great musician. He really is. So I've seen you use flat. Okay, wait. Before you make it flashy, okay. I knew he was talking about me, so I fired back with my own comment. I've seen you use flashy techniques before. Yes, you have. But when you close your eyes, what do you hear? You still hear good music. You don't have to watch it to enjoy it. I make sure that even my flashiest techniques are used musically. I can't say that about all players. I could have tried, but there was really nothing to say. Still feeling a bit defensive, I kept quiet and listened. Here's the difference, he continued. My techniques are not born out of the need to be flashy. Boom! That's what it is. It's like the needy thing. They are born out of the desire to produce with my hands what I hear with my mind. Usually, if I keep my mind focused on music, the technique will create itself. Remember, like talking, techniques are tools and not the end result. I nodded in agreement, trying not to let my insecurity show. Michael didn't seem concerned. He just kept on talking. I saw this saxophone player this last year. I went to the show with this really cool lady, and he came through the crowd and he played for everyone, and then he like laid down and played on his back and stuff. I loved it. I was drawn in the whole time. I was like, I think my mouth would have been open. It was great. Anyways, many musicians get caught up, way too caught up, in the technique when it could benefit them to get caught up in the music. Some of them measure their accomplishments based on whether they've mastered certain techniques or not. That, to me, is like being proud of yourself because you can curl your tongue in 2 or 3 loops. That's all good and well, and maybe you should be proud. I'm not here to say one way or another. But if it is music we are talking about, maybe these musicians should reprioritize. I opened my mouth to speak, but he held up a finger. I sat on the hood of the car, swallowed my words, and listened. To the real musician, techniques are nothing more than tools to get you somewhere. We only need to focus on them long enough to find the correct and most efficient ways of doing things. Once we do that, our attention turns back to music. The more we feel music, the faster the technique falls into place. I know musicians who have worked on simple techniques for years with little progress. He shook his head. That is because for years their attention has been on technique, not music. That is a mistake. I haven't heard you call anything a mistake before now, I remarked. I only call it that in relation to what you want your outcome to be. Okay. If your goal is to speak music right now, concentrating on a technique for years may be viewed as a mistake, a waste of valuable time and effort. I tried to convince myself that he was talking to me and not about me. It was hard. I'd been working on some techniques for a long time to no avail. It was frustrating to say the least. If Michael could help me with this problem, I was ready to give in to him once again. I want to learn to use my thumb like a pick the way you do, I said, moving my hand up and down. I've been working on this double thumb technique for too long now. You think of double thumbing as a new technique, so it makes it hard for you, he explained. If you think of it as an old technique that guitarists have used for decades, it will be easy. You are being trapped by your mind. Boom. He pantomimed holding the bars of jail cell again. He shook the bars, reminding me of his earlier comment. The first thing you must tell yourself is that you can already do the technique, he continued. Once you do that, you will be two giant steps ahead even before you start. The final step will be convincing your hands that they also know what to do. He looked at his hands as if he was talking to them. Then he looked up at me and asked a question. If you were to practice this technique 20 hours a day for one solid week, do you think that you would then be able to do it? Of course I would. Then why spend years learning something that you know you could learn in a week? I, well, if I, hmm, I didn't have an answer, so Michael continued speaking. At the end of that week, what would have changed about you? Would your thumb, hand, or arm muscles be bigger? Would the skin on your hand be thicker? What would be different about you? 1 week later, what would allow you to do what you couldn't do before? Well, I thought for a moment before answering. I don't think my muscles would change much in that short amount of time. They might be sore, but not bigger. I think the main difference would be coordination. Yeah, I would feel better coordinated at the end of the week. Okay, coordination, he mumbled. What is coordination? He looked at me as if he was confused, which confused me. I rested my head in my hands trying to think. It was the first time I'd ever been asked that question. I sat there silent, unable to answer. What is coordination but a form of convincing? He asked, spreading his hands and hunch. Yeah, yeah. Spreading his hands and hunching his shoulders. What? Is coordination anything more than a form of convincing? He asked again. What do you mean? Through practice and repetition, could it be that you are just convincing your muscles and your mind that they already know what to do? Maybe that's the primary function of practice. Maybe so, I replied, trying to keep up. He pointed his long index finger at me and continued. 1 sec. Now, what do you think would happen if you could convince yourself first at the beginning of your quest? In other words, before you start practicing anything, convince yourself you can already do it. What would happen then? I'll tell you. Depending on how well you do at the convincing part, you will cut the practice time in half. Use the full potential of your mind, and practice will become a thing of the past. How do you think I can play any instrument I choose? Do you think I've practiced them all? Can you imagine a master like the Buddha having to practice before he could play a bass? He stuck out his stomach and played an air bass. It was a funny sight, but there was no time for his levity. I had to put my vision of the bass player booting aside. There was more learning to be done. 1 second, I'm going to try and hack this out. Okay, let's see. That idea sounds interesting to me. It even makes sense, but that's make believe, right? It's not truth. I can't imagine actually doing it. I mean, can I really convince myself enough so that I don't have to practice? Can you? He replied in his familiar fashion. Stop it, I responded in my own familiar way. Just tell me the truth. Truth? What is truth? Truth is up to you. You make your truth. No one else does. Tell yourself that it takes a long time to learn something, and it probably will. Convincingly put yourself at the end of the path, and you will find yourself looking back at the beginning. It is all up to you. He seemed convinced. I wasn't. He pointed his finger at me and continued speaking. But know this, you cannot fool yourself. You cannot half heartedly tell yourself that you can do something and then expect to be able to do it. You must be honest. From all levels of your being, you must know what you are talking about. If you want to practice anything, practice knowing that you can do whatever you set your complete mind to. Don't practice believing, practice knowing. Okay, then, how am I supposed to do that? How are you supposed to do that? Michael raised an eyebrow and paused. I hated it when he answered my questions with my own questions, and he knew it. I think he took pride in being able to frustrate me so easily. Knowing I wouldn't answer, he continued. Continued frustrating me, that is. Balls. There are 1,000,002 different ways to do it. Which one are you looking for? He asked. Out of frustration, I gave a sarcastic reply. I only want the 842nd one. Oh, that one. I don't know if you're ready for that one. He lowered his head as if he was really thinking about it. I could see him smiling. That bothered me. Stop jerking me around, I shouted, losing my cool and banging my fist onto the hood of the car. You feed me this nonsense about how I can learn to quit practicing, and then you leave me hanging. Teach me something I can use. Michael spoke in an offbeat tone. The need to practice. When you are ready, you will lose, not before and not after. What is that supposed to mean? I don't know. It just sounded good, like something Yoda would say, so I figured I would try it out. I like Yoda, don't you? I remember Star Wars for the first time this time I interrupted him, raising my hand and putting my open palm in his face. Come on now, enough. Stop messing with me and get back to the point. Tell me how I can learn faster. I don't need to completely get rid of practice. I just want to learn faster. Can you give me a concrete tool that I can use to do that or not? He recognized my sternness, but was not ready to stop joking with me. Okay, calm down, he responded. I see you just want to sit on the sidelines while I score all the touchdowns for you. Isn't it more fun to be in the game? Michael, I shouted, enough. He hopped off the hood of the car and acted like I was. Oh, wait, I hopped off the hood of the car and acted like I was going to walk away. I wasn't convincing and I knew it, so I turned back around and stomped my foot like a child, which made him laugh. This irritated me even more. Stop playing and help me out, he did. Okay, he conceded, still smiling. I'll be serious, but just for a little while. Thank you. I was feeling a little victorious. Ask yourself a question enough times and the answer will appear, Michael replied. And since you are a nice guy, I will give you some help. It's about time, I groaned. Michael took a step closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. Looking at me in the eyes, he spoke. We know that good techniques are a must, but most of us don't have good techniques for learning them. I have already given you most of what you need to know. He nodded, turned, and pretended to walk away. He was more convincing than I was. I panicked. Wait a minute, stop. You have? What do you mean? I asked, trying to cut through my frustration so I could remember what he had said. What had been said? He sat down on the ground and proceeded to put his boots back on. Remember, he said, start by knowing you can already do the technique. Believing it won't do. You must know it with all your being. Using concentration to focus and project your thoughts is very valuable. As well as learning to use not concentrating, this will open your mind to all that is available to you. You must know how and when to use both of these tools to achieve the greatest accomplishments. You understand that now, don't you? No, I answered, still a bit puzzled. Without tying his laces, he stood up and took a step closer to me. When he spoke slowly, displaying the patience of a saint. If I have a musical passage that I want to play, but don't yet possess the required technique, I will focus on that technique just long enough to understand the exact movements required to do it in the most efficient way. After that, which usually doesn't take very long, I pull my attention back inside my mind to where music is. In other words, I release the technique. I let it go. I detach from it. Once that is done, the technique usually develops rapidly on its own. If it doesn't, I will give the technique a little more attention. Key is this: I never lose sight of my real agenda, which is to make music. This is the same method I use for talking. Rarely do I ever think about talking technique. I just talk. Finally, something I understand, I stated with relief, letting him know that most of what he had said was confusing. Here, try this, he offered. The next time you set your mind to learning something, act as if you can already do it. Ask yourself, what would it be like if I could already do this technique? Then do it. If done honestly, you may not have to start from the beginning of the learning cycle. You may be able to skip a few steps. When I was in college a couple of years ago, I was laughing about this today at myself. Feeling pretentious, but I was really just asking, and I really meant it. On the first day of my anatomy course, I raised my hand. I asked the lady, my professor, um, what I could do to get a higher grade than 4.0 in her class, to get something higher than an A. And like everybody in the class, including her, looked at me like, what are you talking about? Anyways, that sort of reminds me of this. I got a B, by the way. And I had to try, it was, I learned a lot. I'll tell you that. But man, I got stressed out too. It wasn't, yeah. Anyways, one other thing while I'm talking. I saw this really cool video on YouTube. It was like a manifestation law of attraction video. And I can't remember the lady's name right now, but she read Peel, something about the power of positive thinking or something. She read this book, and after she read it, it really spoke to her. And she started entering into contests to win things. And every single contest that she ever entered, she won. And so her technique was this. She said, remember SPEC, SPEC. Now, let me see if I can remember what that means. Select it, project it, expect it, collect it. Boom, that's what Michael's talking about. Select it, project it, expect it, collect it. It's that knowing. I love this story too, no capitals. It's so good. Here, try this, he offered. The next time you set your mind to learning something, act as if you can already do it. Ask yourself, what would it sound like if I could already do this technique? Then do it. If done honestly, you may not have to start from the beginning of the learning cycle. You may be able to skip a few steps. Is it okay to skip steps? I asked. Won't I risk missing something? Skipping steps may not always be as thorough, but the better you learn to use your mind, the more knowledge you will bring with you, no matter how many steps are. As long as you are always listening, you should have no problems. He moved a step closer, his nose almost touching mine. The energy coming from his brown eyes alerted me to the importance of what he was about to say. Spoken in almost a whisper, his words gave me a chill. Whether we are talking about music or life, good technique is important. Understand that just learning techniques is not enough. You must make a choice, a conscious choice to take one road or another, good or bad. Each is narrow, making it difficult for U-turns. Know that the mind is a powerful tool and that its power can respond to you both positively or negatively. Learning to use it completely should not be taken lightly. This is where technique, as well as intention and attention, come into play. Many people have gotten sucked into the black hole of the mind, for to return again. With that comment, he got into the car and closed the door. Pointing out the window, he offered final instructions. Don't forget to put out the fire, the one on the ground, and the one in your head. He looked back at the grass. It was ablaze from the coal. That will be the easy one to put out, I thought out loud. I heard him chuckle from inside the car. I danced around, stomping out the flames. I thought about what he told me. I didn't know why, but it sounded as if the teacher was giving his student a warning. But a warning of what? Boom. Dang, you guys. I know it's so good, but that's the end of the chapter. That's what we're reading today. I intend to go live with chapter 5 or measure 5 tomorrow. Probably after my Thanksgiving. We're getting together at my Mama San's. So yeah. I really appreciate you. I'm really thankful that you're a part of my lives. All of my multiple personalities. I'm really thankful you're a part of my life. Thank you so much. And I hope the rest of your master number 11 2 is wonderful. And that you feel the thanks for the things that are in your life and the things yet to come. So this next chapter we'll be reading is called Emotion Feel. A child playing air guitar plays no wrong notes. I love yous, and I'll see you tomorrow. Mwah! Take care of yourselves and do it like you feel it. Thank you.